I think if I had the situation, and I'm thinking of my young self, the one thing is look to your own values, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, so often I'll say to people, "What are your values?" And whether they're new aspiring leaders or whether they're actually top of the tree.
Hey, welcome to the Leadership Loading Podcast. I'm Jason McClaren.
And I am Mags Bell, and it's lovely to be here, Jason.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for coming to the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me along.
Yeah, and as the listeners may notice, Mags is from not the United States. We were talking earlier about making sure that we're confirming our recording time because she's in a about 10-hour difference from me, I believe. So thanks for taking the time to come on the show and telling us what you're doing over there.
Yeah, no worries. Those who are maybe wondering about the accent, it is a Scottish accent, but I do live in Australia, so
Yeah,
a bit of a difference.
definitely. So being that you are a world traveler, you're obviously an international leadership expert and speaker, which is why you're on the show today. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in that realm, and then we'll talk about your programs you got.
Yeah, I've often questioned myself, what is it I actually do? And a few years ago, I was thinking about, do I help leaders become better leaders? And I realized I fell into my own program called Leading Me because I realized that people follow. And if we're not leading ourselves in the way that we want others to follow, that can cause us issues. And then I realized that in actual fact, I was teaching people how to lead themselves, which then has a role in how you lead others.
Definitely, that's kind of the reason we have this show. Leadership loading is to help leaders, mostly new leaders. So those that are maybe
Yeah.
stepping into their first role or just trying to get a promotion or something like that, and they need a place to get this information. So, can you tell us about some of your background, some of the speaking you've done, and how you've influenced others?
Yeah, I suppose I fell into leadership because I wanted the badge. I wanted to be a manager of people. And I would say probably the first time round, I was only 26 years of age at the time, and I don't think I was particularly good at it. There were certain aspects that, I could deliver targets, and I'm not sure if I could make people deliver them. I think they delivered them despite me at times. And I think I was a bit of a control freak in those days. Uh, but then I moved away from leadership and I was carrying the bag again. And then I went back to leadership when I realized what it was really all about, which was creating an environment that people feel nurtured and could develop. And it wasn't about me telling them what to do. And that was a wake up call for me when I went back to what I call carrying the bag. So I was in sales and I was working in the pharmaceutical industry when I became a manager for the second time round. And that really, I sat back and I looked at the leaders who I admired and the ones who had been hell on earth for me. And that's when it dawned on me. I learned a lot from hell on earth, don't get me wrong, but the ones I really admired were the ones who were leading themselves really well, that I could respect and I trusted, and I knew they had my back, and realized that's the sort of leader I wanted to become. And through that, it is the nurture of people. It's not really getting them to hit targets as such. It's actually looking for what motivates them to then have them love what they're doing, and naturally they do hit targets. And I, as the leader, I'm there to help them deliver, not me deliver and show them how to deliver and then get them to deliver. And that was how I'd started when I was younger.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will call that situational leadership, or I kind of have a blend of servant leadership and situational leadership where I empower my team to do what they need to do. And then they just come to me when they run into roadblocks and I can help get those roadblocks out of the way.
Yeah.
And then going back to some of your other topics, leadership isn't always a title, like you said, the badge. You can be a leader without the title. And I think a lot of organizations have
Yeah.
kind of taken on that mantle now where they may not be able to put someone in a leadership position because of headcount or because of their org chart, but people will take on leadership roles, especially in the lower levels, either like foremen or lead men. Or like I've had teams where, we have managers, but then we don't have anything below that. So the
Yeah.
managers may work day shift where I need people to take the lead on second and third shift. And it's just, somebody, I either train them up or they step up and then we work together to solve the problems and make sure the organization's running efficiently.
And you get the natural step up. And I was a natural step up, but I then it's back to what I teach now. The leading me is the ego can grab a hold of you, even if if you're one to step up, and you just naturally are happy leading and doing things and getting things done and organizing. And some people prefer to sit back and go, yeah, I'm happy to follow that person who's doing that. And I think certainly when I was younger, I was a natural leader in sport. I tended to lead from the front. And it wasn't until I thirsted for the badge that the ego, and everybody cracks up when you say the word ego and, oh no, I'm not egocentric. And it's like, well, we all are. We all have an ego. And this thing about leave the ego at the door, you cannot do that. It's nuts to even think you can. So for me, it was managing the ego. It's not the ego managing me, right? So, and that's where leading me comes from. The first step is I have to keep my ego in balance, not have the ego running me. And just to give you an idea of that, I have a thing called the Leading Me ladder of leadership. And in that middle section, if you can imagine, the middle of your body is where leading me sits. That's where your ego naturally comes into the middle. And that's where you're response able, you're balanced. And if you imagine, if you're listening to this, the side areas are you're either bigging it up, which is usually control and judgment, which was what the badge was all about, Jason. I wanted the badge for that control side. And then the other side of that is belittling, where, you're either in victim mode or blame mode. And for anybody who thinks that they've never been, and I don't have an issue with ego. We all do. We come into this world with an ego and how we deal with that. And it's just understanding that you can catch yourself either bigging it up or belittling, and then you can bring yourself back into that middle ground. That's what it's really about. And I've got a couple of tools that actually help you once you recognize where you are. When you're bigging it up, one of the tools is called the 3 keys to eliminate your shite. And the other side, when you're belittling self or others, or you're blaming, then there's one called the 4 R's. I'm Scottish, so I roll my R's. The 4 R's release model. And these two just help you back into the middle ground. And I think when you understand that the ego is a really good thing to have when it's balanced, and for a leader, especially in those crisis moments, if you've got a tendency to go into control and judgment or belittling self or others, that's not a good place for you to be. So it's just your ego is managing you or mastering you at that point, and it's just bringing that back into the middle.
Yeah, and then of course myself coming from the military, you have to keep your ego in check because it's easy to have a super ego.
Yes.
If you promote up and then you don't balance that, then it can be negative. But I think,
Yeah.
like you said, you have to have it. There's no way to leave it at the door. But sometimes that brings on brotherhood and that sort of thing. But having that balance where you're not overly aggressive to your subordinates and that sort of thing, I think that obviously helps. And then you see different outcomes from different leaders that can't do that. And
Yeah,
I think that's beneficial in one way or the other. So let's
absolutely.
look at leading me. Is this more for companies or for individuals?
No, it's very much for individuals. I mean, coaching was not a natural thing for me to do. Speaking was, because I would, in sales, you're speaking all the time. And in pharmaceutical sales, you speak to individuals, and then you're speaking to groups, and then you're speaking to large groups. So I fell into the speaking side accidentally. But the coaching side wasn't easy for me because I am a control freak. So I had to learn to ask questions when I was coaching. Um, so as you go, you start to realize the magic is in the questions you ask, and that people can find their way. Really, you don't have to know all the answers. And I think sometimes it's, especially when we're aspiring leaders, we think we need to know all the answers, and we think our managers and our leaders are the ones who have all the answers, but they don't. And when you have your ego in check that way, you soon understand that by keeping that in check, you become humble, and people respect that. And the best thing of all, and the best thing to develop others, and is asking questions for them to then not rely on you, but become interdependent. So when you've got a team that's interdependent, and they don't, look for you as the boss just to give them the answers, that's when you know you've struck it gold. Yeah, it just makes life a lot easier. So I wasn't a natural coach, but I did. When I remember, I was put on my first coaching course, and I didn't. I just kept thinking, why am I here? I could be out there working. Why am I on this? Why am I asking questions? But it was the second time when I had an issue, and the coaching side really, really helped. So leading me really is about me asking the quality questions of myself, and also then being able to ask the quality questions that help others understand they've got the answers, that they're only coming to you because they're afraid to do something. But as soon as you extract that from them, that becomes a totally different thing. And that's where confidence comes from. And if you can build a team with confidence, that just makes life so much better. And as I say, it creates interdependence rather than a dependence or an independent team. And you really want that interdependence.
Definitely. And I hate going always back to my background, but being a firefighter, you have to have that teamwork and
Yeah,
interdependence because everyone has a role. And when you're on a 4-man truck, if one person is not pulling their weight, you'll notice it very quickly.
very
And that's why
much.
we have that camaraderie and interdependence because we train together and we play like we fight and we go after things, and that's what helps us be successful. So
And when you know your strengths as well, you know your role in that moment, that you bring your strength to, and then you're trusting that others are going to do the same. That's what makes a great team.
all right. So, Mags, if you had one leadership tip for a new leader, say you had 1 minute to download your thoughts to them, what would you say?
I think if I had the situation, and I'm thinking of my young self, the one thing I'd look to your own values, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, so often I'll say to people, "What are your values?" And whether they're new aspiring leaders or whether they're actually top of the tree, often I'll ask the question, "What are your values?" If you can't answer them clearly and say this, 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 and this, you may have 5, you may have 4. If you've got a list of 10, you don't know your values. That's not, but it's the core values within you. If you can't answer that in one word and then describe that, you don't know yourself well enough. If you don't know what your purpose is, you don't know yourself well enough. And if you don't know what your 10-year vision is, you don't know yourself well enough. So don't go running after the badge that I did, because you'll land yourself in hot water. You'll get frustrated. You won't understand why you're not moving up the tree because you don't know what you really want. So that's probably what I would say is find out what your vision, values, and purpose, your personal one. It's the first thing whenever I'm working with anyone, the first thing I'm asking them is that, and they go on to, I've got a course called Decision Making Made Easy. And it's where they really go deep with themselves and find out what is my purpose, what is my values, what is my vision. I think that's the first place to start with anyone. So that would be the advice I'd give.
Yeah, I think as leaders, we need to identify those values early on, and especially if we're going to be mentoring others and kind of leading others. So that's good stuff to know.
Yeah.
All right. So if listeners wanted to get a hold of you directly or find out more about Leading Me, how do they do that?
Probably the easiest place is magsbell.com. And if you put /blog, you will see plenty there that I do podcasts, I do video for people that prefer video. There's blogs there, basically everything you can get, all my social media is there. And I suppose the other thing is I have a community as well called, and which I absolutely love, Dare to Shine Your Brilliance. And basically we have an app, people go in, and it's for leaders and aspiring leaders. We come together to help each other out, and for any issues we have, we bring it up, but we're really supportive. So it's magsbell.com and then /DTSYB -community. And in there, you'll see everything we do, and it's great. And for those who are on video at the moment, they can see there's also a QR code as well that will take you straight there. So yeah, that's probably the easiest and best ways to get hold of me.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes below, also for those that are on a device that can click on it. So
yeah, great.
All right. Well, thanks, Mags.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm just hoping your audience will love what we've got here and can take a little, as I call it, wee gem out of this that will just make life easier for them, because it's supposed to be fun and easy out there. So stay true, stay you, and keep bringing out your brilliance as well, Jason. Great show.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership inspired.